Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. For the first time in 22 months since Russia invaded into Ukraine, the Ukrainian lifeline of American weapons and ammunition is in real danger of collapsing. The explosive war in the Palestinian territory of Gaza has taken the focus away from Ukraine. There is clear war fatigue in the West when it comes to the question of backing Ukrainian resistance. But more than fatigue, there's also an increasing realization that despite pumping top-notch weapons into Ukraine, Kiev has had little success in pushing back the Russian troops. And these developments beg an obvious question. Has Russia outlasted Ukraine in this crippling war of attrition? And does this mean that the United States, even though it is making all the right noises, is deliberately letting Ukraine sink, making it inevitable for Ukraine to negotiate on Russian terms? Our next report gets you the details. A single day of fighting against the Russian war machine costs Ukraine a staggering $136 million. You must hear that number again, $136 million, just for the Ukrainian soldiers to have enough ammunition and logistical support to step up and brace the Russian onslaught. And this number is according to Ukraine's finance minister, Serhiy Marchenko. At the moment, Ukraine spends all of its revenue on its defense sector to meet the needs of its army, while its other budgetary needs to run the government have so far been largely covered by Western aid. Since the beginning of this war in February 2022, Ukraine has received a total of $68.5 billion as budgetary support from its allies in the West. But the coming financial year, that is 2024, is going to be a very difficult one. Ukraine will need billions of dollars of financial support just to disburse its social payments, wages for its government staff, and pensions for millions of Ukrainians. And according to the Ukrainian Finance Ministry, this expenditure alone will create a budget deficit of $43 billion in 2024, which Kiev hopes to cover up using the financial aid from its Western partners. And this is where Ukraine's wartime budget appears to have hit an insurmountable roadblock. The American President Joe Biden is making all the right noises.
Congress needs to pass supplemental funding for Ukraine before they break for the holiday resources. As simple as that. Frankly, I think it's stunning that we've gotten to this point in the first place. While Congress, Republicans in Congress are willing to give Putin the greatest gift he could hope for and abandon our global leadership, not just in Ukraine, but beyond that. We've all seen the brutality that Putin has inflicted on Ukraine, invading another country, trying to subjugate his neighbors to his iron rule, committing atrocities against Ukrainian civilians, trying to plunge them into the cold and darkness of winter by bombing their electrical grid so they don't have any heat during the winter, or electricity for that matter.
But many analysts around the world aren't convinced that Joe Biden is putting the money where his mouth is.
Mr. Biden is complicit in the defunding of Ukraine. And as he says, they want to pin the blame on the Republicans. But the fact is that he had every possibility of getting the money that he wants from the Senate if he had agreed to the demand of the Republicans that more money also be put up for the border security. He didn't do that. And he knew that the Republicans would then reject the bill. So he is finding a way to let Ukraine sink and then to blame the Republicans.
On the front lines, Ukraine is looking increasingly underprepared and short-equipped to deal with Russia's winter offensive. The Russian Defense Ministry has put out this video, claiming that the Russian forces had destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles, the US-made 777 howitzers, and the M109 self-propelled howitzers. Pitched battles are being fought on the front lines in places like Kupiansk, Krasny Lyman, Donetsk, and the left bank of the Dnipro River. Russia also claims to have shot down 2 Ukrainian MiG-29 fighters, 1 Mi-8 helicopter, and has even reportedly intercepted an anti-radiation missile. while Ukraine claims to have destroyed multiple Russian artillery and electronic warfare systems. The former coal hub city of Avdiivka, which had a pre-wartime population of 30,000 people, has been almost completely depopulated, as the Russians claim to have completely surrounded the city. Within the European Union, there are grumblings over the concessions that have been given to the Ukrainians. Truckers in Slovakia have now joined the protests along with the Polish in blocking off the main border crossing points with Ukraine. These truck drivers are demanding that the European Union must reintroduce a permit system for their Ukrainian competitors. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the wounded soldiers on the occasion of the National Army Day. He distributed medals and also tried to pull up the flagging morale of his soldiers. In a video message to his countrymen, he has promised victory at all costs.
It was difficult, but we have persevered. It is not easy now, but we are moving. No matter how difficult it is, we will get there. To our borders, to our people, to our peace, fair peace, free peace, against all odds. The wall of remembrance, the wall of memory to our heroes. I'm sure for every one of us it will be a reminder and will serve as a wall for our will. A wall that won't be broken and overcome by fear, mistrust, despair, discord and thoughts of giving up.
But wars aren't fought on willpower alone. Military campaigns are sustained by weapons and logistics. American military aid for Ukraine at this moment hangs by a thread. The minute it becomes clear that Kiev no longer has the American greenback to stand upon, a Russian victory in this war becomes a mere formality. There is trouble brewing between Venezuela and Guyana, as Caracas is preparing a legislation to claim Guyana's oil-rich Essequibo region as its own. The Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on the 5th of December proposed a bill to create a Venezuelan province in the disputed region. Furthermore, he has ordered the Venezuelan companies to prepare to enter into the oil-rich territory for the purpose of exploration and exploitation of the fossil fuels and minerals immediately. Rejecting these measures, the Guyanese President Dr. Ifrar Ali has termed the move as a direct threat against his country's sovereignty. Though the conflict over the oil-rich Essequibo is said to be a century old, tensions have escalated recently after a Venezuelan referendum rejected an international court's jurisdiction over the territorial dispute. Our next report gets more details.
Latin America is bracing itself for a conflict. An escalating border dispute, described as a powder keg of a situation, is threatening to spiral out of control. For more than 100 years, Guyana has administered the 159,500 square kilometers region of Essequibo between Guyana and Venezuela. The densely forested and oil-rich contested region makes up more than two-thirds of its territory and is home to 125,000 of 800,000 Guyanese citizens. Venezuela has long maintained that an 1899 decision by international arbitrators to award the region to Britain, the colonial power ruling over Guyana at the time, was unfair. It claims that the Essequibo River to the region's east forms a natural border and has been recognized as such historically. Litigation is currently pending before the International Court of Justice regarding the border.
Pending a final decision in the case, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
The International Court has warned Venezuela not to take any action which may alter the status quo.
In the territory in dispute, whereby the Cooperative Republic of Guyana administers and exercises control over that area.
But the authority of the court itself to rule on the dispute has been disputed by Venezuela. Though historically disputed, the tensions intensified after the 2015 discovery of oil in the waters of the Essequibo's coast by the US oil giant ExxonMobil. Sparsely populated and grappling with high rates of poverty, Guyana underwent rapid transformation since then, with over $1 billion in annual government oil revenue. With the transformational discovery, Guyana is set to surpass the oil production of Venezuela and is on track to becoming the world's highest per capita oil producer. It didn't help matters when in August this year, Guyana started auctioning off oil blocks in Essequibo. Consequently, a controversial non-binding referendum on Essequibo's fate was held on the 3rd of December in Venezuela. An overwhelming 95% voted yes for Caracas's designs on Essequibo, or rather Esquiba as it's known in Venezuela. But the critics of the Venezuelan President Maduro, who has been in power since 2013, claim that the referendum was merely to whip up nationalist fervor and to distract from calls for free and fair elections. An emboldened President Maduro, after the formidable victory in the Sunday referendum, announced his next steps on Tuesday.
The organic law to regulate the creation of the state Guyana Essequiba and all the decisions of last Sunday. The only way to repeal this decision would be to hold another referendum. Let those who propose that we go to the international court, to the trap they have there, like the Paris Arbitration Award of 1899, while ignoring the historical position. Let them dare to call a referendum to repeal this historical decision and repeal the organic law that is going to be debated and approved. Let them dare them.
Additionally, he issued an ultimatum to oil companies working under concessions given by Guyana to withdraw their operations within 3 months. Slamming the bill proposed by Caracas, the Guyanese president threatened to take the case to the United Nations Security Council.
Tonight, President Maduro announced several measures which his government intends to take in enforcing the outcome of the referendum held on December 3rd, 2023. As I made clear from the date the referendum was first announced, this is a direct threat to Guyana's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and political independence. The measures announced are in blatant disregard of the order given by the International Court of Justice on December 1st, 2023. Guyana views this as an imminent threat to its territorial integrity and will intensify precautionary measures to safeguard its territory.
The next day, Beijing, a close ally of Venezuela and its main creditor, said that it considers both countries its friends and is in support of resolution of their border issues. Guyana, which currently produces 400,000 barrels of oil and gas per day, could explore the possibility of invoking Articles 41 and 42 of the UN Charter, which can authorize sanctions or military action to maintain or restore international peace and security. Should Venezuela attempt to enforce the referendum, will this over a century-old territorial dispute be resolved amicably, or will we see emergence of yet another major conflict zone, now in Latin America? Well, given the raging Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Palestine conflict not exhibiting any signs of slowing down, the world could do with one less conflict zone.
Three college professors were killed and another one was critically injured in a shooting incident at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas campus on the 6th of December. 4 others were taken to hospitals due to symptoms of panic attacks. Responding swiftly, the university police confronted and killed the suspect, a career college professor in his late 60s, at the scene. The precise motive of the rampage remains to be ascertained. The financially struggling suspect is believed to have at least mailed 22 letters with no return addresses to different universities across the United States just before the carnage. Mass shootings are alarmingly common in the United States of America. And this year alone, there have been more than 630 mass shootings that have been recorded so far. Another damning statistic, Wednesday's tragedy also marks the 80th school or university shooting in the United States this year.
America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, was jolted this past Wednesday by yet another mass shooting at a college campus.
Be alert, UNLV. Continue to shelter in place.
Condemning the mass shooting, the American President Joe Biden said that the Las Vegas campus is the latest college campus to be terrorized by the horrific act of gun violence. 3 college professors were killed and another grievously wounded by a financially struggling academic who was denied employment by several higher education institutions in Nevada.
And at approximately 11:45 a.m., LVMPD dispatch received reports of an active shooter at the UNLV campus. UNLV campus police responded to the scene and engaged the suspect immediately right outside of Beam Hall. LVMPD officers also responded simultaneously. I can tell you today, 3 of the victims are confirmed deceased. There is a 4th victim who suffered a gunshot wound and is now currently in Sunrise Hospital, upgraded to stable condition. 67-year-old Anthony James Polito, P-O-L.
The gunman, identified as 67-year-old Anthony James Polito, was a former business professor. In the past, he had taught in Georgia and North Carolina and had applied for a job at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, but did not get the job. He seems to have fallen on tough times recently and was facing eviction. He also had a previous criminal record of computer trespass dating back to 1992 in Virginia. On the tragic day, armed with a Taurus 9mm handgun, Polito brought 11 magazines with him. 9 loaded magazines were later found on his person, though it is not confirmed how many rounds he had fired. As it is often discovered, the 9mm Taurus handgun was purchased legally last year. 33-year-old political worker Cesar Marquez was in a meeting with 70 other students when he realized that a shooting was happening on the campus.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely scary. There was a lot of adrenaline pumping through everyone. We kind of stayed close together, trying to comfort, some of the students that were there, making sure everybody felt as safe as we could. There was some scary times when somebody, tried to open the door, and we weren't sure if it was the shooter or if it was the police. And then, later on we would hear like some loud noises of I don't know, like people thumping on doors. And then there was some sightings from either the SWAT team or the Metro Police, giving somebody instructions to either run or get down. I wasn't sure.
Guns have been woven into the very fabric of American culture and politics. Consequently, a gun-obsessed nation of 330 million people is awash with about 400 million guns. More than half of US adults have experienced a gun-related incident. The threat of mass shooting has become a very real concern in everyday life. The land of the free is besieged with a palpable sense of insecurity and vulnerability. Why is America, the self-appointed global policeman, unable to check violence in its own backyard? And how many more tragedies is it willing to endure before it arrives at the final solution of stricter gun laws?
The military leaders of Burkina Faso and Niger announced on the 2nd of December that they'll quit from an international force known as the G5 Sahel that had been set up to fight against the Islamists in Africa's Sahel region. The move is the latest blow to the fight against the insurgents in one of the world's most troubled regions. Formed back in 2014, the G5 Sahel has secured only some meager results, with Mali also having quit the original 5-nation force last year. The big question that now arises is what impact will this have on the militant groups that are linked to the Al-Qaeda and the so-called Islamic State that have grown in strength across the Sahel region. Our next report gets you the details.
The G5 Sahel alliance, which included Mauritania, Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger was created in 2014. In 2017, the leaders of the 5 Sahel countries agreed to deploy a joint anti-terror task force backed by France. Mali was the first to quit the 5-nation force last year following a military coup. Emulating Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger withdrew from the alliance on the 2nd of December this year.
The governments of transition of Burkina Faso and Niger, after an in-depth review of the G5 Sahel and its operations, have decided to withdraw from all G5 Sahel bodies and organs acting under their own authority.
As per the joint communique from Burkina Faso and Niger, the alliance was struggling to achieve its objectives. Allegedly, the legitimate ambitions of these two countries in the zone of security and development were thwarted by the institutional red tape and what they chose to describe as old-fashioned burdens. In a veiled reference, the joint communique also took a dig at France.
The G5 Sahel cannot serve foreign interests to the detriment of those of the peoples of the Sahel, still less accept the diktat of any power whatsoever in the name of misguided and infantilizing partnership that denies the right to sovereignty of our peoples and our states.
The military rulers of Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali have all accused Paris of having an outsized role after years of French deployments in their countries. Taking a note and respecting the sovereign decision of Burkina Faso and Niger to leave the alliance, the two remaining members of West Africa's G5 alliance, Chad and Mauritania, said on the 6th of December that they were paving the way for dissolving anti-rebel grouping. According to Article 20 of the G5 Founding Convention, the alliance can be dissolved at the request of at least 3 member states. In a related development, in September this year, 2 months after a coup in Niger, the country signed a mutual defense pact known as Association of Sahel States with Burkina Faso and Mali to assist one another, even militarily, against possible threats of armed rebellion or external aggression. The G5 alliance failed to stem the violence by armed groups, leaving thousands of civilians and fighters dead and millions displaced. How effective this new arrangement will be in meeting the challenge posed by militant groups, only time will tell.
With that is the wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.